The Eurovision was great to be a part of. It's definitely been the biggest project I have ever been involved in by far. Well, basically, that choice was made when we got involved in the project. And I think the reason why it was grandMA3 chosen for the system was part of the tender, the specifications in the tender for the Eurovision kind of said you need to have X amount of synchronous DMX outputs. You need to be able to have a multi-user system where multiple programmers can work in the same time, and a lot of other things that kind of pushed it towards MA3. Because if you think about it, the amount of parameters we used, the amount of fixtures we used, the amount of programmers, the amount of stations, there is only, I would say, with my knowledge, only one system in the world who can actually handle that, and that is grandMA3. So I think that's why grandMA3 was chosen for this project. We had a huge amount of MA3 devices in this whole show setup here. We had, during our show, during performance, we had 11 consoles in session at the same time, and that was 9 full sizes and 2 grandMA3 lights. And when we were in rehearsals, we had 3 extra consoles in session. We had 2 consoles on the floor in the venue, which you could roll on the stage, or you could move around in the venue if the programmers needed to do some work on the floor. And then we had a system console in our office, as we called it, on the 3rd floor, where we could monitor what was going on. But during the performance, we kind of cut the amount of consoles down to 11 to make sure that the consoles were where we were. So if anything happened, we could get to the console physically without any issue. We had 16 processing units in the network as well, and that was composed of 12 processing unit XLs and then 4 processing unit Ls, or large. And then on in the demo city, we had 90 8-port nodes connected to the network as well in the same time as everything else. So basically it was 90 plus 16 plus 11 MA3 devices in the same network at the same time at all times. So it was quite a big network to manage. It was quite a lot of, we needed to monitor it a lot to see what was happening with each device and make sure that everything was okay. Well, the operators set up a multi-user environment, so they had, of course, their own user profile. They had their own console or consoles. 4 the guys had 2 consoles, 2 full sizes. One of the programmers had 1 full size, and we had another programmer with just a grandMA3 light. And they worked in the same show file all the time, a huge show file. By the end of it, we almost reached 1.2 gigabyte of show file on the system. So that was definitely a very, very large network or a very large show file to work in. They worked in the same show file all the time, and the pros and cons of that is that when you're working in a system this big, you have to be aware of the system. You have to be aware when you save your show, for instance, just to be aware of what's happening in the meantime. Don't run some crazy macros while the show is saving. That could get you into some trouble. But during the weeks of programming in the venue, we definitely learned a lot about the MA3 system and how the MA3 system reacts when the network is so big and the show file is so big. So that was definitely a learning curve, but a good one. We learned to track back and say, okay, this station dropped out, what happened? And we could go into the command line history and we can go in and see, okay, the programmer sent this command. For some reason the console doesn't understand. And then we could go to the program and say, you were running this macro here, this part of the macro the console doesn't understand. And then sometimes he would say, oh yeah, I know that there's a problem here, and he would fix it, and that problem would not come back. Having Luminex as a backbone was, I would say, essential for us. The possibility of monitoring the entire network all the time to see if any devices were failing or anything would happen to anything, that was really beneficial and something we spend most of our days just watching the network windows to see if any stations were misbehaving, so to speak. Yes, we definitely used the MA license for Arneo, which gives us even a greater benefit of Arneo than normal, because we can see every MA piece of hardware in the Arneo watcher, in the Arneo overview, and we had this view with all the network stations, all the MA network stations in one window, so we could all the time we could see who is the global master. If that suddenly switched, we knew we had a problem. We could see if stations dropped out of our MA3 system, even in our Arneo overview. So having Arneo and the MA license is definitely a benefit if you're doing large installations or large show with MA3, because you can constantly monitor the MA3 network in Arneo, which gives you a benefit, definitely gives you a benefit. I think what helped us the most as system engineers, you have to understand that there was a programming team handling all the programming on the consoles, and then we were a few guys like running the system. And the thing that benefited us the most in the systems department was definitely the ability to log into each station and watch the system monitor on a separate screen. We had a screen set up in our office where we were watching, I think, 7 stations, all the stations that had a priority in the network, so they could become master at some point if stations were to fail. We watched that like command line history all the time, so we could intervene if something happened. If a programmer, for instance, was sending a command to a console that the console didn't understand, it would give us like a warning, and we could go to that program and say, oh, by the way, you did this, you need to think about it because the console doesn't understand that command or something like that. Or it could be because the show file was so big, some of the commands was just, under normal circumstances that wouldn't be a problem. But because the system was so large, the punishment for doing something the console didn't understand was bigger, so to speak. Well, the challenges I think we had was basically the learning curve. I mean, one thing is to know the MA3 system, one thing is to know how it works and how you connect stations and what is station priority and what is IP addresses and all that stuff. But again, if you scale that up to that amount of universes and that amount of network units and all this stuff, things just becomes a little harder, and you need to approach your system in a different way than you would normally, because it doesn't take 2 seconds to load a show file. It takes a minute to load a show file and push it out into the entire system, and that's a benefit in some sorts that the MA3 system can handle it, but also something that you need to work around. You need to know how it works. You need to know how the system reacts and what you can and cannot do to the system. So that was definitely some of the challenges we had regarding the MA3 system. That I always knew about MA, and which has proven to be true, is that there are 2 sides of MA, 2 sides of MA, 2 sides of MA3. And that is, there is the programming side. When you are programming, sometimes something happens. It was a great time. It was nice to be around serious people. It was nice to be around a team who wanted to accomplish something bigger than normal. So it was a very serious production to be on, but also quite a fun production to be on. We had a great lighting team there, some great programmers, the design team. Everybody around the Eurovision was very nice people. So I had a great time there, and I learned a lot, I must say.